This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 262, entitled Women as Rights Given Adults or Rights Taken Children. Description. This flyer discusses whether women should be deprived of their rights, and particularly their rights to vote, their right to vote, given their appalling track record that has caused young men to boycott marriage and fatherhood, thus wiping out whole populations. Something has to change. Is there an alternative way to avoid population decline without stripping women of the right to vote? The flyer itself. Women as rights given adults or as rights taken children, by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Let me center it a bit better. This flyer discusses a very serious matter, namely whether men should strip women of their rights, particularly women's right to vote. This topic is being discussed increasingly as MGTOW and Masculist theorists consider the declining birth rate in advanced countries, which is well below replacement rate. Things cannot continue as they are, because if they do, we wipe ourselves out, and within a mere century, if one does the math. Therefore, it's only a question of time before the gender politicians are forced to take the question seriously. That is, what is society to do to stop ourselves from wiping ourselves out? One of my favourite MGTOW commentators is TFM, Turd Flinging Monkey, who makes a strong case to take women's rights away from them. I listen to him and to Sandman every day. I also used to listen to Big John's channel, MGTOW is Freedom, but the hated Jewish feminazi CEO of YouTube deleted it. I'm hoping it will pop up soon on another platform. I'm expecting my own YouTube channel to be deleted at some stage, so I have backed up all my MGTOW/Masculist videos, all 260 plus of them, ready to be transferred to another platform if necessary, but a lot of work in uploading them. TFM has the view that women should be deprived by men of their rights, particularly the right to vote, since women have so obviously abused it. A strong case can be made that women do not deserve to have rights and should be treated as the children that they are, says TFM. TFM regularly emphasizes this opinion in his daily videos, so I'm becoming quite familiar with it. This flyer discusses what I think of the idea of stripping women of their rights for the sake of preserving the human species so that we do not die out. Before giving my own views, I need to set up a straw man, that is, TFM's views, so that I can attempt to refute them. TFM thinks that giving women equal rights with men has resulted in women becoming like men, that is, getting career-competent educations, which takes up a lot of their 20s. They then establish themselves in their new careers, which takes them into their 30s, by which time their fertility is seriously starting to dip, so that by their mid-30s, women have a hard time conceiving, so typically have only one kid. The birth rate in Japan, Germany, Italy, Spain is only 1.3 children per woman. The replacement rate is 2.1. TFM employs the following modus tollens logic. Modus tollens is a form of symbolic reasoning that goes as follows. If A is true, then B, but not B is true, therefore not A is true. Here is TFM's version of the above argument. Giving women equal rights with men has resulted in women choosing careers over having babies. resulting in the wipeout of our populations. We don't want our populations to be wiped out, therefore strip women of their rights. If men collectively decide to do that, there's nothing women can do to stop us. We are men. We are smarter than women and a lot more aggressive. If men become collectively angry with women, God help women. Women will be forced to accept what men decide for them and will merely submit, as they have always done throughout history and prehistory. If this is the first time you have heard this argument, it usually comes as a bit of a shock, since we are so brainwashed to think of democracy as a good thing. I certainly value democracy, living in the Chinese dictatorial shithole that is a brutal dictatorship, whose face on the country's money, that is Mao Zedong's, is history's greatest tyrant, killing more people than any other single tyrant. That is, about 80 million Chinese, with the great famine he caused, the creation of the Laogai slave labour camps for political prisoners and other murderous campaigns. The only institutions that killed more people than the Chinese Communist Party are the cigarette companies and the hated Jewish banksters, who indirectly killed over 200 million people last century, with the 2 world wars they engineered, the Great Depression, the constant wars to feed the arms trade that they control, etc. So, giving up on the idea of democracy for women comes as a bit of a jolt. Is there any alternative to implementing what TFM is pushing for? That is what this flyer is about. Here's my opinion on this issue, that is, should women be seen as responsible adults who should be given equal rights with men, or should women be seen as children with child minds who should not have rights, and especially not be given the right to vote, which one can certainly argue that women have badly abused with their takeover of the divorce courts, making them so toxic for men that 2/3 of young men now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and are thus wiping out whole populations. But it is the hated feminazis, the fluffy feminist hypocrites, who took over the divorce courts, so they are the root cause for the boycott of paternity by young men. So the fluffy feminist control of the divorce courts needs to be stopped. But how do men fare the divorce courts? TFM also points out that women are 51% of the voters, and that more women vote than men. So the gender politicians will not men fare the gender laws, because that would be political suicide for them, since most women really like the privileges given to them by the fluffy feminist control of the divorce courts. For example, a divorcing woman gets custody of the kids with a 90% probability. She gets her ex-husband's house to raise her kids in, half his possessions, child payments from him, and often if she's a real fluffy, that's a traditional woman who expects to parasite off the money of a man, she gets paid alimony for life, with no legal or moral obligation on her part to FIP up, become a financially independent person, and get a job so that she stops parasiting off him after the divorce the way she did before the divorce. If the gender politicians start talking seriously about men faring the divorce laws, then women can block vote out the gender politicians, because the women are the voting majority. Here is where I think TFM goes astray. A logical argument is only as good as its premises. If you want to attack someone's argument, then it usually pays to attack the premises that the logic relies on. To overcome TFM's 51% female voter argument, one only needs to think of the idea of converting some of the women into female masculists, and that is a role for the masculists. I've made several YouTube videos already on this idea of the conversion of women into female masculists by doing 2 things. One is the carrot method, of simply educating women with masculist ideas, so that women become conscious that women can oppress men too, that women can be real parasites off men, manslaving them by expecting men to work for women in exchange for a bit of sex from time to time. The stick method is to threaten women with manlessness and babylessness, a la MGTOW, with men refusing to have relationships with women and refusing to give women their sperm, if women don't FIP up and vote with men to men fare the gender laws. This way, with say 60% of the voters in favour of men faring the gender laws, that is, a combination of male voters plus female masculist voters, then the gender politicians will be forced to give this majority of voters what they want, that is, they will men fare the gender laws. A similar strategy can be applied across the board to men-fair the gender laws in general, for example, bringing in the PARA, it's paternity rejection right, and systematically removing social and legal discriminations against men by the gender politicians. There's a long list of such discriminations against men that need to be addressed. So the Masculists need to educate society into MGTOW/Masculist ideas, so that women can become conscious of them and be converted into female Masculists to vote together with men to men-fair the gender laws. Masculists need to get the broadcast media solidly behind them, so that the media people spread the ideas to the masses, the millions, so that large numbers of women are exposed to MGTOW/Masculist ideas. Imagine then that the gender laws are men-fair this way. How could such an occurrence negate the need to take away women's rights? Well, with the divorce laws men-faired, then marriage and hence divorce would be hugely less toxic for men. So a lot of men would be willing to have families again. A lot of men want to be fathers, but don't dare to in today's world due to the awful toxicity of the divorce courts for men, thanks to their control by the hated fluffy feminist hypocrites, the hated feminazi bitches. With men given the PARA, paternity rejection right, then paternity will be very much a choice and not a legal obligation imposed by laws created by the hated feminazi bitches. Imagine a world where masculist ideas are commonplace because they've been taken up readily by the broadcast media and widely disseminated so that everyone is familiar with them. It's only a question of time, I believe, before this becomes the case, because what is the greatest media story of our times? Question mark. What is more important to human beings than the very survival of human beings? If the hated feminazis continue to control the divorce courts, then young men will continue to boycott marriage and paternity, thus wiping out the population. Therefore, as the population seriously starts to drop, as it has already started doing in Japan, then sooner or later the journalists will get into the act and start spreading MGTOW/Masculist ideas, because they will see that it is the influence of MGTOW/Masculist ideas that the birth rate is plummeting. So Masculists need only to keep pushing the media to spread their ideas, so that in turn women can be influenced by them and convert to female masculism, and then vote with men to men-fair the gender laws. If women don't do this, then I agree with TFM's strategy. Men can always hold over the necks of women the threat of being denied the right to vote if the feminazis continue to control the divorce courts. Women have 10% smaller brains than men and have a greater difficulty in seeing the future than men. Women are not as good as men at thinking about the longer-term futures of issues, having narrow horizons, focusing more on immediate domestic issues than the bigger political picture. Once the population seriously starts to decline, the population decline debate will heat up. Gender politicians will be asking, what can be done? How to persuade young women to have babies again? How to persuade young men to be fathers again? Inevitably, MGTOW/Masculist ideas will then become commonplace as the media teaches everyone what the pioneer MGTOW/Masculist theorists have been saying for years. Prominent MGTOW/Masculist leaders can get on the media and teach the public that the gender laws need to be men-faired, otherwise young men will continue to boycott marriage and paternity. Young women will be taught that they are not going to have babies due to the hated feminazis having taken over the divorce courts, making them toxic for men, resulting in the MGTOW/Masculist boycott of marriage and paternity. Hence, young women will learn to hate the feminazis as much as men do, and this should tip the balance in the proportions of the voters, pro and con, in men-fairing the gender laws. Young women will start supporting the Masculist political push for the men-fairing of the gender laws, understanding that it is in their self-interest to do so, because they can see that if men can be given men-fair gender laws, especially regarding divorce rights, then many more men will be prepared to be fathers again, so that these young women can have babies again, that is, be given the sperm of quality men again, so that young women are not forced to be manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and left rotting on the shelf. So I see the loophole to TFM's argument is the female masculisting of women. By doing that, the drastic denial of democratic rights for women can be avoided. After all, if women have their right to vote stripped from them, then that will just rekindle another suffragette campaign, as those women with the top 10% of androgenized brains, in parentheses, making them more manlike in their thinking and interests, close parentheses, really start complaining hard and making men's lives a misery, even more so than the misery created today by the hated feminazi bitches with their ever more misandrous gender laws that are passed year by year, showing women's irresponsibility when it comes to the bigger picture of wiping out whole populations by making divorce so toxic for males. I agree, however, with TFM's threat of stripping women of the right to vote if the alternate proposal that I'm proposing fails to work. Most feminists are still fluffies when it comes to being hypocritical about wanting their cake and eating it too. Most feminists are still fluffies when it comes to fipping up. Most women don't make the effort to become fips by getting a career-competent education at high school and college. 3/4 of young women at 16 choose to become fluffies by choosing to study the soft option, that is, intellectually easy, intellectually lazy subjects like English literature, history, languages, instead of the harder, intellectually more demanding subjects like math and the sciences, that will allow women to study STEM, science, tech, engineering and math, and the professions at university. In their 30s, when their biological clocks are ticking hard, they will realise with their fluffy crap diplomas, they cannot afford to buy a middle-class house to raise her kids in. So she will look around for some gullible manslave to parasite upon, to have him pay for the house so that she can sit on her fat ass raising her kids that he pays for. The fact that most women want equal rights with men, but reject equal obligations with men, shows that women are not responsible adults the way men are, and hence are less worthy of being given equal rights, particularly the right to vote with men. So, if the Masculists fail to persuade women to vote with men, to men-fair the gender laws, so that men can be persuaded to be fathers again, then the population will continue to fall, so that more drastic, more brutal methods will become necessary to stop the population crash. And then TFM's drastic solution could come into being, that is, women are deprived of their rights. How could this be done? The male politicians of both major parties could simply agree to throw women politicians out of the parliaments and then vote to deprive women of rights, especially the right to vote. The male gender politicians then men-fair the gender laws, purging the divorce courts of feminazis, firing them from their jobs, and replacing them with male judges who have MGTOW/masculist views to ensure the men-fairing of the gender laws. If necessary, further steps could be undertaken. Governments could set up a baby farm system in which women are paid by the government to have lots of children. These women could be paid for by taxes to have lots of kids in government housing. It would be their full-time job, having a long string of kids. They would be professional baby factories and child raisers. A lot of women would love to do this. One advantage of this baby farm idea is that governments could take the opportunity to implement some eugenic thinking by offering the baby farmers the sperm of highly intelligent men, that is, the sperm donors from very smart men who are protected from being sued with a paternity suit by new government laws. This way, if the intelligent women refuse to be baby farmers and prefer their careers, then the lower intelligence of the baby farmer mothers could be offset by the high intelligence of the donor fathers. One thing is clear. This issue of whether women should be seen as adults to be given rights or as children whose rights are to be taken away from them, given the awful track record women have shown so far, is one that needs to be debated a lot more. There is a lot at stake, so needs to be given a lot more time and effort. More minds, both male and female, need to be addressed to this issue. It is critically important. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels: De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, flyers and Garis essays. Ciao.